4th of January 2022. Um, I want to show people an example of how the hyper game theory is employed against the individual in medical COINTELPRO. So went to the everything's orchestrated in advance. This is a supercomputer that's directing and orchestrating the paradigm, able to modify it in real time. Everything is directed by a supercomputer. These organized stalkers, and those are basically government informants turned into provocateurs, okay? And government perpetrators, people who work for the government in some capacity, whether it's local, state, or federal. This would be federal. This is a VA hospital. But I'm not using this to show how organized stalking works. I'm using this to show people how the hyper game theory is used in conjunction with organized stalking to manipulate a person's medical treatment. So I went to the hospital, paid for my glasses. Oh, it'll be $130. Oh, okay. So never mind the previous trouble, absolute chaos and trouble I had last time I was in this office, in the vision clinic inside the hospital of the VA hospital in Manhattan, downtown New York City on 23rd Street. So he looks over the cost. Oh, it'll be $130. So he charges me $130, okay, for my glasses. Then as soon as I walk out of the clinic, he calls me 7 times, back to back to back to back to back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is how they manufacture chaos. They're using the hyper game theory and other models of deception and manipulation to manufacture chaos, to force the victim to perpetually respond. That's how the technology works. They're using physical and psychological trauma to map out and reverse engineer the sensory and neural pathways of the victim's brain and central nervous system. In order to do that, they must force the victim to play the game. Well, there are certain basic necessities of life that a person has to have: food, shelter. This car, for example, is my shelter. I'm isolated like most targeted individuals. The targeted individual cannot be allowed to engage in a random and chaotic pattern of conversations and situations with people who are not plugged into the paradigm. It disrupts the technology by disrupting the verification process. So what they're also doing is manufacturing chaos. Government contractors are using government informants and government perpetrators. An informant is a civilian, a perpetrator is someone who works for the government, to manufacture chaos on a daily basis in order to gain control over the mind control victim's psyche. Okay? When you're too busy trying to defend yourself against all the stalking and the gaslighting and all the accusations and the problems that they generate through that, and they can generate a lot of trouble and chaos. That's manufactured chaos. When that happens every day, then you have less time to see reality for what it really is. So it's not just isolation like you see here, okay? Me isolated every day and because of the violence and harassment. No, it's more than just isolation. It's a form of cognitive containment. Okay, they're seeking to create thought filters, and also to isolate the victim to as a form of cognitive containment. Okay, they have to control the victim. Has to be placed into a controlled environment. That's why they get on these conference calls with all these perps and these provocateurs get on these conference calls. They can't just let you talk to other people. They can't just let you engage in random and chaotic conversations and situations with people. That disrupts their technology by disrupting the verification process. So when all that's going on, and you're having to constantly defend yourself against the stalking and gaslighting and all the manufactured chaos, the accusations and problems that they generate through that, then you have less time to see reality for what it is. It's cognitive containment by sensory deprivation. They isolate you from family and friends, and they have different ways of doing that, okay? They can turn them into perpetrators, provocateurs. They can turn them into victims. They can engage in a slander campaign, which they've done with me, I know for a fact. I had family tell me they're targeted this way, okay? They just engage in a slander campaign and slander in the community to isolate the victim, okay? So from normal relationships and conversations and situations that are part of the normal person's everyday life. That's why they target you so heavily on social media. That's why they target you in places like church or charities, to prevent you from building the victim, from building social networks. Okay, well, they're also manufacturing chaos in the medical treatment of the victim. This is called medical COINTELPRO. This guy, oh, it's $130, just 130. That's it, just 130 bucks, no problem. And then, that's chaos. That's the chaos. They're generating chaos, and they always want to step into the visual, audible field of the victim when they do this. Also, when the victim is trying to make videos about what's happening, they want to step into the visual, audible field of the victim. But in order for that to happen, they have to. So they're trying to prevent the victim from building and developing support networks to keep the victim isolated as a form of cognitive containment. Can't allow you to engage in random and chaotic conversations and situations. It disrupts their technology. Okay, that's what organized stalking and gaslighting is used, and in manners which are designed to constantly instigate and provoke. Instigate crazy making arguments designed to constantly provoke you into emotional responses that can be remotely measured and integrated back into R&M data. At the same time, constantly discrediting you repetitively sabotaging your daily activities. Okay? As you move around each day trying to function and survive. Well, what the solution would be just to remove yourself from the hamster wheel. The hamster wheel of chaos altogether, and ignore them, but they're not going to allow you to ignore them. If you saw the video that I made the other day as a live feed, a man one of the perps wrecked my car, and he did it on a live feed, and this is the second time they've done it in 3 weeks. That's vehicular stalking, but the point is, they love this triangulation where what they'll do is they'll manufacture chaos. They'll deliberately misquote prices, misquote treatment. I'm talking about medical COINTELPRO now, etc. And then by doing that, they force the victim to repeatedly respond. So here, as soon as I walk in, he calls me 7 times. That's not normal, people. That's not normal. Nothing normal about that. This is a major hospital. It's a VA hospital. Call me 7 times in just a few moments, in just a few seconds. That's something wrong with that. Okay? And this is the same person they used against me before in another, to manipulate my medical treatment in another way. I don't have time to go through that. And of course, they use stonewalling and other methods to engineer chaos. But the point is, this is medical COINTELPRO. It's designed to force the victim to perpetually respond. In order to achieve that, for their technology to work properly, they must constantly and perpetually step into and manipulate the visual and audible field of the victim. Now, the other optometrist that quoted me the price and everything and took my prescription, he wasn't there. He's supposed to be there. Okay, where was he? But it's a game. It's a game. It's hyper game theory, and I wrote it down. I want people to see. If you look into the description box, you'll see an explanation. But here, I'm just going to slowly scroll through this, and you can go back and look at it. But it explains the hyper game theory, and it's also I put another explanation into the description box. But they're constantly manipulating the victim's social media. I just said that earlier. It's a game of deception and manipulation. It just never ends because there's always a higher optimum to choose from. There's always a next move to be made. So the process is endless. It's a game. It's a deadly game of deception and manipulation. That's it. That's trauma-based mind control. It is a deadly, deadly game. My hearing is severely damaged. My internal organs are severely damaged from these. I have brain damage. My inner ear is damaged. That's brain damage. Okay? And that's how the technology works. That's how it works. It's called medical COINTELPRO, and they're using the hyper game theory to do it, to manufacture chaos. It's brand new. Been going on for years. They have targeted my medical treatment all over the world in countries which absolutely despise the American government. They did it, like Nicaragua, other places. They can't allow, one of the reasons they target the medical treatment of the victim is the victim again, in order to function and survive, you have to have medical treatment. You have to have access to medical treatment, to medicine. I have to have my glasses to see. but also to prevent, keyword now, drum roll please, to prevent overlapping patterns of medical evidence from developing. You can't have thousands of targeted individuals going into emergency rooms complaining of the same symptoms all over America and say there's nothing happening. Okay, that can't happen. So they got to manipulate that medical treatment to stop that from happening. So I walk in, he charges me $130. Then as soon as I walk out, he's called me 7 times. This is a game, people. It is a game. It is manufactured chaos. They're using these provocateurs and these perpetrators, okay, to manufacture chaos, to force the victim to overcome the chaos each day, trying to function and survive. Each attempt to overcome the chaos, each forced adjustment away from the stalking and the gaslighting is an evoked potential, a remote neural response, a synaptic response inside the victim's brain, which can be remotely measured and integrated back into R&M data. That's how the technology works.